Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good morning, depending on where you are in the world. So, this is going to be the next weekly episode of This Week in Tech, all things PC gaming, and as well as just tech in general. For those that are new, welcome to the channel. I have a couple things to talk about this evening. I don't know specific topics beyond what I have lined up. There's not a whole lot going on in the world of PC gaming, PC DIY right now. So we may have more of like an open discussion, or we can always just end the stream early. So it just kind of depends on the viewers and what you guys want to see or talk about. All things technology. Hey RK, good evening. Hey Gershon, thanks for tuning in. How are you guys doing? We're kind of in that waiting period now where those that are what I would consider the quote unquote true enthusiasts are kind of holding over now until the next generation of hardware. So we might talk a little bit about that. I think a lot of what you're going to hear from me on this live stream is going to be purely speculation at this point, mostly speculation on how these newer hardware, this next hardware generation is going to play out. Oh, you know what? I'm streaming at the wrong resolution. I'm streaming at 4K resolution. It says YouTube's giving me an error. You need to change the video resolution. The current resolution is 4K, which is not supported for this configuration. All right, hold on. Let me. I'm gonna have to stop and restart the stream. Okay, it should be back. We should be back. I'm sorry about that. I know why that happened. I knew I should have double checked something. I was thinking before, I was like 5 minutes before I had to go live, and I was thinking, am I forgetting something? So the reason why it was at 4K was because for the recent review video, or I guess it's kind of a review, not really. It's more like a comparison between 3080 Ti and 4080 Super. If you guys watched the video that went live earlier today, some of the B-roll, not B-roll, I was trying to capture some of the footage after I did all the benchmark tests, and I had set OBS to 4K, and that's why it was stuck like that. I forgot to change it back. So for those that don't know, we stream at the native resolution of 1440p. Not a lot of content out there actually streams at 1440p. It's usually 1080p or lower, or in some rare cases you can stream 4K, especially if it's like a streaming service. But in this case, 4K just uses way too much bandwidth. So we're covering Nvidia's chat with. We can talk about it. I did not look into that. The chat with RTX program. You can't run that program in Windows 11 or Windows 10. Oh, see, well, there you go. That's one of the ways that they kind of force you into Windows 11. Another example of things that kind of force you into Windows 11 is Wi-Fi 7. There's no Wi-Fi 7 support in Windows 10, even though Microsoft could easily backport the drivers, but they refuse to do so. So that's another thing. Not that that matters much today because there's not a lot of Wi-Fi 7 hotspots or access points, but as time goes by, that will become a thing. So they're kind of artificially trying to kill off Windows 10 by doing things like that. Now with chat with RTX not being supported on Windows 10, that's another example now of how they're trying to force people to switch over. So yeah, I saw that article about chat with RTX. I did not do any. I'll be honest with you, I did not get a chance to look at it yet. I was planning to, and I may very well do a separate video on that in the future, but I haven't looked at it this week. So, but yeah, that's just one thing. That's another thing to look at. What about Linux, Wi-Fi 7, and other programs? Oh, Linux won't have a problem at all with Wi-Fi 7. It's really just Windows 10, like Microsoft's really trying to get people to switch over. They don't want people on Windows 10 anymore. They're trying to kill off Windows 10. A lot of, I don't know. There's a lot, like if you look at, I guess there's statistics on it, but Windows 10 is still the largest one, I think. It took 10 hours to download, and Nvidia server's always trash. Isn't that basically, like, how does that work? Does that, oh, that runs locally on the computer, right? Like, it's not a cloud-based thing? Yeah, I know it doesn't really matter that much, but I'm just saying, like, I'm just giving you guys an example of one of the ways that they force you to upgrade. Like, they'll artificially lock you out of certain things. I don't know. I've been using Windows 11 now since the first part of this year, and I haven't really had too many problems with it. I like tabbed command line and tabbed notepad, especially tabbed notepad. I've already used that so much that to me that feature alone is one of the things. The other thing is like you can do dark mode command or not command. What is it? The task manager. Task manager can also be in dark mode now, like the rest of the PC if you're running in dark mode. So I do like that about it as well. Some of the things that I miss though, like for one thing, I had to, and thanks to RK, I was able to get Classic Paint. So you guys, let me show you guys. So this is Classic Paint. This is the paint that was in Windows 10. I got this now working on Windows 11. So this PC that I'm running right here, we are streaming from a Windows 11 based PC. This PC used to be Windows 10 until I think it was like back in January, I finally decided to upgrade it. But I had been running Windows 11 on my Threadripper PC basically since sometime in December. So I had already tested Windows 11 on that machine for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I finally decided to upgrade the streaming PC to Windows 11. Yeah, it's Windows 11 Pro. So originally, this PC was, if we go way back, this was Windows 10 or no, this was Windows 7. Or no, was it Windows XP? No, I think it was Windows 7. I think this PC, this stream PC, the original installation was, I want to say it was Windows 7, but it might have actually been Windows XP. No, that's not right. Because Windows XP, you had to do a clean install to go to Windows 7, which I may have done now that I think about it. So maybe this PC, I don't think this PC was ever Windows XP. I think I started on Windows 7 with this machine, then went to Windows 10 in 2016. So, like, I'm the type of person that always wants to wait it out for a year or two. So, like, in the case of Windows 10, I waited like 1 year. Because I remember when Microsoft was trying to give people the free upgrade to Windows 10 from Windows 7. And I was on Windows 7 through 2015. And I remember getting the prompts like, do you want to go to Windows 10? I never did it. Then after a year, I finally did it. And then I kind of regretted not having did it sooner because Windows 10 was actually quite a bit better than Windows 7, at least by the time that I upgraded to it. And likewise with Windows 11. So I was on Windows 10 until literally earlier this year, which was like a month ago at this point. And I think Windows 11 first was available as a free upgrade in, I want to say 2021. So like it's been more than 2 years since it's been a thing. And I didn't upgrade to it until very recently. So I'm just glad they kept that free offer because I have a feeling Windows 12, Windows 12, the thing is, no, they already put Copilot in the Edge browser. So if you use Windows Edge, or not Windows, Microsoft Edge, the web browser, that already has Copilot in it. And what they're going to do is they're going to take Copilot and they're going to add it to Windows 12. But my understanding is Windows 12 is actually like the latest version of Windows 11. Like they're not really doing a specific version of Windows anymore, although I don't know if that's true or false. So I'm not 100% up to date on what Windows 12 actually is. Like in terms of how are you going to install it or how do you upgrade to it? I don't know that part yet. Copilot is on Windows 11, like how Cortana was enabled. Yeah, but Cortana. So is Copilot basically the replacement to Cortana? Because I always thought Cortana just kind of like died off. Like does anybody use Cortana? I think I always disabled it and converted to a basic search for just indexed files, and that was basically it. So, like in my case, I use it very similar to how I've always used the search function since as far back as Windows 7. Copilot replaces Cortana. Okay, yeah, that's what I figured, because I don't understand why they would need to have two different AI assistants. Or Copilot's on Windows 11. Okay, Copilot replaces Cortana. Yeah, not a fan of Windows 12 super spyware disguised as Copilot. Removing telemetry. That was one of the questions that came up. Like I've been listening to a lot of these webinars for AI recently, and one of the questions during the Q&A section, there's always somebody in the audience that asks the question about privacy concerns and like, can you turn it off? You know, like, can you disable it? Like the best example I can give you guys, if you guys aren't already aware, AMD and Intel's coming up with this soon too. AMD is releasing, they may have already did it, but the NPU, neural processing unit. So, here, let me bring up Paint. So AMD, if you guys have been paying attention to this, Ryzen 8040, I think it's the Ryzen 7 8040, or maybe it's just Ryzen 7/9. Ryzen 7 and 9 8040 include something called an NPU, which is, for those that are in the network telecom industry, you guys would think of NPU as network processing unit, kind of like CPU and GPU, but no, this is a neural. Did I spell that right? No. Neural processing unit. So they're coming out with this like neural processing unit, and this is basically an AI hardware solution. 8040, yeah, all of them do. So I think Ryzen 7s and 9s have the NPU. I don't think Ryzen 5s have the APU. In fact, I want to say, I haven't really looked at it, but I think the previous generation, Ryzen 7 and 9 7040, have NPU in them. Like, they include NPU. I think they have two. So think of it like this. Think of the NPU as like an E-core. The easiest way I can explain it without getting into too much detail, it's a dedicated type of core, which is very small. So it's a lot like an E-core on an Intel processor. And it's only going to be used by the operating system for something like Copilot. So this is the sort of thing that they've been talking about recently. And there's a lot of privacy concerns, stuff about like, classic Skynet sort of discussions, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of that comes up when you talk about these things. And if you listen to the webinars, or if you listen to just somebody from AMD talking about this, one of the questions that always comes up from the audience is there a way to turn this off in firmware? Meaning, can I go into the BIOS of the laptop, because these are mobile processors, and can I disable it? That's one of the things that always comes up. But like, my counter argument to that is, well, even if you could turn it off, Microsoft would just make Copilot run on the P cores. Like, they would just do that. Like, this is the whole purpose behind the NPU is for energy efficiency. So it's like it allows Copilot to run on the NPU, which is very low power, like an E-core essentially, even lower power than an E-core. And as a result of that, because it's constantly running, and this is why the privacy concerns are a thing, because if it's constantly listening to you through your microphone on the laptop, or if it's constantly like looking at you through the webcam, for instance, for like facial recognition and eye contact and that sort of thing. Because one of the things that they always talk about with this stuff for AI is like, oh, you can be in a meeting, like a teleconference meeting, like on a WebEx or a Teams call or a Zoom call, and you can like you can be like doing something, but your eyes, like the camera will make it look like you're looking at the camera all the time, even though you might be like looking over and typing up an email or something, you know what I'm saying, while you're in a meeting with the video camera on. So that's one of the things that they always talk about that this can do. But the fact that it's watching you, that implies that it's watching you, and it could potentially be listening to you. And that's where the privacy concerns come in. So that's why people are like, well, how do you turn it off? Can I turn it off in the BIOS? You know, but the thing is, if you turn it off in the BIOS, all that means is Copilot can't run on the NPU. That means that it's just going to run on the P core, and if it does that, that means that you're basically giving away, you're sacrificing battery life, because Copilot is going to drain your battery faster running on the standard CPU processor cores versus the NPU. So I don't really see a point in disabling the NPU. I don't think that does anything. Like, it doesn't do anything positive. It's not going to get rid of Copilot. Like, if someone wanted to disable Copilot, they would have to make registry changes in Windows, and they have to do it that way. Like, they can't do it from hardware, which is another thing that's concerning, because think about like the hardware vulnerabilities that could accompany stuff like this. But yeah, AMD is kind of the first to market with this NPU technology, as far as I know. Intel, I can't remember if Meteor Lake has this stuff, but Meteor Lake is in such a weird limbo right now. Like, I can't find anything that actually has Meteor Lake. And I'm guessing Intel is kind of skipping Meteor Lake at this point and going straight to Arrow Lake, which is coming out like later this year, like in the second half of this year. So eventually Intel will catch up to AMD on the neural processor thing. And maybe, I think strategically, Intel will probably align the launch of Arrow Lake with Windows 12, because Microsoft and Intel typically team up before they do a big launch. Think about 2021. 2021 was Windows 11. And you know what also came out in 2021? Alder Lake, Intel 12th Gen. And what did Alder Lake introduce? Big core, little core, right alongside Windows 11 with the thread director. See, so I have a feeling Intel and Windows, Microsoft and Wintel is going to push a really big combo of Windows 12 with Copilot plus Meteor Lake with AI NPU cores. So those that are on early adopter stuff right now with Windows 11, and they want to test like this NPU stuff, they have to go with like a Ryzen 8040 processor, or 8045, or a 7045, or something like that. Remember, Google Chrome incognito mode still has hooks to collect them. Yeah, that's the thing, because like if you're logging into VMs, or not VM, well, no, it wouldn't be VM. I was trying to think, like, if you're logging into some kind of telemetry dashboard thing, they always tell you to use incognito mode for that reason. The next few years are just going to be so much AI, it's going to be exhausting. Yeah, I know. And you know what's funny? Speaking of AI, I wasn't meant to talk about this, but I just saw this story come in. Nancy Pelosi makes over $1.4 million on her Nvidia call options in just 84 days. Yeah, speaking of AI, this is a very random story, but it's actually true. Here's the proof right here. So, speaking of AI, there's going to be a lot of AI in the next year and beyond. So for those that were thinking that it was going to go down, not yet. Although, one thing that's concerning about this is the fact that there's a lot of people that have often said that Nancy Pelosi has insider trading capability because of her position in the government. So this to me, so the thing is, she bought these call options on November 20, and now we're going way down the rabbit hole. So this is like a tangent, but we'll don't worry, we'll come back to the hardware piece. I just want to talk about this a little bit because there are implications of this for those that are thinking about getting into the AI market. So the thing I want to point out here is she bought these in November 22nd of last year, and they expire. It says here, purchased 50 call options with a strike price of $120 and an expiration date of December 20th, 2024. That means that she, in theory, has the option to take a position, sell these, whatever, from November 22 of last year until December 20th of this year, which means she has roughly 13 months total. But the fact that she sold it literally, like yesterday or today, whenever this story came out, today, like the fact that she sold all of those options now is concerning because so the question is, does she know that something bad is going to happen to the AI market if she, quote unquote, has insider trading capabilities? You know what I mean? Like, why would you buy Nvidia call options back in November that don't expire until the end of this year? Why would you sell them now and cash out if Nvidia is like on the way up? You know what I mean? Like, is this implying that Nvidia's stock is going to crash or slow down or something bad's going to happen? Or is World War III going to happen? Like, what's going on here? That's the thing that is a little bit, this is kind of like the tinfoil hat thing going on. Who is Nancy Pelosi? Well, I guess Marcelo doesn't do much stock trade, or I guess call options or puts, but yeah, no, she's basically a politician in the U.S. government. She used to be the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, which is one of the three branches. But people always say that because she's in the government, it's well known that she does a lot of stock trading, and because of her position in the government, people always say that, oh, well, she has insider knowledge. So she knows if a stock's going to go way up before it does. So she can like buy a bunch of it like while it's cheap, as an example. Or she knows when it's going to crash and tank. So if she has a stock, she knows that she can offload it really quick and sell it and make a big profit right before it crashes down. Like that's what this is all about. That's the only reason why the story exists. That's the only reason why this is news. So anyway, going back to and we're going to talk about the PlayStation 6 in a little bit here. Going back to the AI stuff, it's a strange time because a lot of people, including Jensen Huang, who I might add recently spoke at the World Government Summit in Dubai, in the Middle East, in the UAE. He recently gave, he was interviewed essentially by the Arab nations as to what the future landscape is going to look like due to AI. And he gave some very interesting answers. And he's going to talk about a lot of this in 6 weeks at like GTC. But he's of the opinion that the world is about to go into what he called the third industrial revolution, which is basically the AI revolution. And he basically was urging he was urging world governments to partake of this AI while you can get in now and lock a position before it becomes either prohibitively expensive or there's some kind of crazy chip shortage. Who knows, right? Like there's a lot of unknowns in the future. So he was basically acting like a big salesman for Nvidia, saying, "Hey, buy a bunch of my GPUs today, now while you can, because you don't know what happens in the future." So, what was this? Tells me there will be more government regulations to Nvidia, like banning the 40. I didn't think of it that way. I didn't take it that way. That you're talking about the Nancy Pelosi stuff. I don't know about that. Maybe, possibly. I thought of it more of like, well, is the stock going to crash because something bad's about to happen that she knows about? Like, is America about to get into some kind of war or some nonsense like that? Like I was thinking like, what is the potential thing? What is the reason here why she would sell all her Nvidia call options way in advance? Because she had all the way until the end of this year to decide when to sell those. And the fact that she's selling it in February when there's still like all the way to December to decide, and she's getting out like right now, like that to me is kind of, that raises some red flags. You know what I'm saying? You need to do a GTC bingo card. So GTC, so I guess we can make some predictions about GTC. I really don't think there's going to be that much interesting stuff to hear from that. I think it's all going to be AI focused. I think what they might do is they might introduce some professional cards that are AI optimized. You guys have already seen, there's one article already that I saw on here about the, where is it? Maybe it was on Video Card Z. I wanted to talk about this Chinese graphics card because that's another one. There was one. There's an ADA card that Nvidia is releasing. Where is it? Is it on here? No, not the 2080. This is it. Nvidia RTX 2000 ADA announced. So I expect GTC to talk about this stuff. There's going to be a lot of this at GTC. It's all going to be focused on AI and, different AI apps and that kind of stuff. I think that's what it's going to be about. Because they're trying to sell higher VRAM, lower end graphics cards with clamshell RAM, so that they can cash in more for those that are so desperate for running AI apps and they want to be on the ADA architecture. So they're going to be doing that with like 8107, which this article is talking about. I think this is the sort of stuff, in terms of hardware announcements, this is probably what will get announced. Well, not just this. I mean, this is already announced. But stuff like this. I don't think there's going to be any kind of gaming stuff at GTC. Like, no gaming. They've already revealed their hand. And that was the 40 series. I mean, the 40 Super series. So, yeah, there's going to be no more hardware for the gaming market. It's all going to be like enterprise, professional, AI, that kind of stuff. He even said that at that conference in the interview. Really want to attend GTC. Jensen charges $500 daily. Leather jacket, man. Yeah, we're going to talk about that Chinese GPU. 4060 Ti 16, already faster than this, and it's cheaper. Yeah, this is the sort of stuff that they're going to announce, though. Well, see, what I don't understand is why doesn't this thing, what I thought they were going to do, I thought they were going to announce these lower end cards, but they were going to have like NVLink on them so that you could daisy chain multiple cards in a pool, like explicit multi-GPU. I thought they were going to do that and announce some kind of crazy thing with GPU scaling. Because think about it, like if Nvidia wants to innovate, what can they do? Well, bring back multi-GPU. That will double, triple, maybe even quadruple the sales of your GPUs if you can show that these AI apps can get good scaling with multi-GPU due to some new framework that they add in there with CUDA extensions. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how you do it. That's how you increase your sales. That's how you drive up your stock price even more. So you sell more of the same GPUs in higher quantities to the exact same customers. That's what you do. You don't need to bother trying to go find new customers. Just sell to the diehards that are already addicted to the CUDA stuff. So 4080 Super is the 2080 Super, 4090 is the 2080 Ti. I want to buy RTX 4090, but the AI stuff hiking up the prices. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Should have got one in the summer. MSI, yeah. Yeah, well, it's really hard to get them outside the US right now. From what I understand, it's actually not super hard to get one if you're in America. I mean, especially if you're near a Micro Center, because Micro Center has been getting them in regularly at the normal prices. But if you're outside the U.S., I don't even know. I don't even know where to begin. How to go about getting a 4090 if you live in like the EU with all the markups at this point. Oh man, that'd be a nightmare. Or even like in Asia, like if you're based out of like Hong Kong, or even in like Australia, I think they're really hard to get right now. So, yeah, those things are really hard to come by depending on where you are. Because the thing with China, like it's supposed to be quasi banned, but then the problem is it's like so many 4090s got in to China and they're still there. So it's like, oh, you can find one, but they're gonna be marked up depending on who has them and trying to scalp. But it's kind of a mess everywhere for that one particular card. So that's why what we really need, man, I really feel like AMD needs to up their game like dramatically on the software piece for AI, because the 7900 XTX with 24 gigabytes of VRAM, that thing has the potential to be a monster at AI from what I've seen with ROCm on Linux. But the problem is it still lags it lags support for so many other frameworks that just work with NVIDIA's software, like with the CUDA code. So it's like the code base is so entrenched that you need it takes a monumental effort on the programming side to get the Radeon cards to perform where they should be in terms of like AI acceleration. So, but I've seen a glimpse of it on Linux because I've tested the 6900 XT on Linux with Stable Diffusion and a couple other things like older builds and newer builds, and it's fast. It's pretty much the same speed as the equivalent NVIDIA card. So I just really think like that's the thing, because everyone's complaining, oh, I can't get a 4090, it's so expensive. Well, you know why? Because there's no competition. The 4090 is by itself. The 4090 is the only game in town for the AI. There's no other 24 gigabyte card that has equal performance. So but obviously, there's another card out there that has 24 gigabytes of VRAM, but it just doesn't have the software support level that the 4090 does. The ecosystem's not built. It's like the infrastructure's missing. Like you got to build all this infrastructure, which is the software stack and all this other stuff that NVIDIA's built up over like 10 plus years. And that's the reason why there's a huge gap. And that's the reason why the 4090 is so expensive. Well, you just upgraded the monitor 4K. Oh yeah, 3070 Ti is so not going to do 4K. So if you guys saw my recent video, the video that uploaded on the channel, went live on the channel earlier today, was 3080 Ti versus 4080 Super at 4K gaming, and then also 1440p gaming. And the 3080 Ti struggles at 4K in a lot of games, a lot of new games, and that's the reason why. Yeah, the 3070 Ti, that's even worse. That would not cut it for 4K. There's only a few GPUs that can do 4K properly, as far as I'm concerned. Obviously the 4090. The other ones would be the 7900 XTX and the 4080 Super, as my video clearly shows. But even the 4080 Super, if you go back and watch my video, and my video, I'm trying to make those GPU comparison videos. I don't want them to be that long anymore. So I basically got rid of me talking through a lot of the benchmark results and just show you guys the benchmark results. The whole video is like 5 minutes long, and I think the benchmark section alone is like 3 minutes. So yeah, 3 minutes, 10 games, plus power consumption numbers, plus total average at 4K, average at 1440p. I kind of try to condense it down. The thing is, I like to do a lot of different game engines, because I feel like if somebody benchmarks like 30 games, but almost half of those games are Unreal Engine, I don't really think that is worth doing, because almost half of the games are on the same game engine, so it's like, okay, they would all have similar scaling. So I try to change it up and include a lot of different engines. So even though I'm only benchmarking 10 games, which I think is a decent sample size, especially for 4K, because you see old games running 4K, new games running 4K, and there's a huge difference. Like the 3080 Ti can handle Shadow of the Tomb Raider at 4K, no problem. But Avatar at 4K, the 4080 Super isn't able to handle Avatar at 4K ultra settings with no scaling, as those results clearly show. So, Lamet's saying there is no 4K GPU. No, I don't really agree. I feel like the 4090 is a decent 4K GPU. It's obviously, as newer games come out, that opinion will definitely change, and it will at one day the 4090 will no longer be a 4K GPU, but it is a 4K GPU today, as far as I'm concerned. The ones underneath it, the XTX and the 4080 Super, are technically 4K capable GPUs, from my opinion. And you guys know that I game at 4K, so it's like I wouldn't be using these GPUs to game at 4K if I don't consider them 4K GPUs. So it depends on the type of games that you play. It ultimately comes down to the type of games that you play. Most of the games that I play, I can run at 4K native resolution without any issue. The few exceptions would be Avatar. I have to use FSR3 for that game. I don't have to use FrameGen in any of the games, but I would have to use FSR quality or DLSS quality, which is basically 1440p upscaled to 4K. So it's giving me the exact same frame rates as someone who's gaming at 1440p at that point. So, but there are only a few games where I'm forced to do that. But most of the time, what are the games that I play? Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, that's a new game. That game can do 4K native on the 4080 Super, no problem. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, another game that I can run 4K ultra settings, native res, no problem. It's another game that came out this year. So I don't agree. I think it really depends on the type of games that you play, and that determines if you consider the GPU 4K or not. I play a lot of older games too. Like I will be playing Final Fantasy 14 Dawn Trail when it comes out this summer, and I don't think that game is going to be that hard to run. Like that game today, they're raising the requirements to a GTX 970 minimum. You have to have a GTX 970 or a Radeon RX 470. Those are the new minimum requirements for Dawn Trail, and based off of that, I'll be able to run it at 4K native, 60 plus FPS ultra like day one without doing anything. So It ultimately depends on what you play, and also what you consider like playable frame rates. Because for me, 60 FPS or above is playable. I don't care. I don't need 150 plus frames. Yeah, but I think this is what a lot of GTC is going to be about. It's going to be like all AI, professional stuff. Nothing really for the gaming market, really. Um, yeah, that's pretty much what I'm expecting. Okay, so a couple of other types of games here. PlayStation 6, next gen Xbox, and future consoles will have increasingly smaller performance gains or higher prices. So this kind of implies that they could potentially be doing the GPU tiering thing. So like they could have a PlayStation 6 base model, a PlayStation 6 Pro model at release simultaneously. I kind of think both Sony and Microsoft they're probably going to copy what Microsoft did with the Series launch. So like they did Series X and Series S together day one. I think Sony is going to do the same thing. So they're not going to do like they will still do like a mid-gen refresh like they're going to do this year with the PS5 Pro. But I think what this means is that they're probably going to do kind of like a entry-level console like the Series S, and they're going to do a premium console like the regular one, or they might even do 3 tiers. Who knows? But I feel like these guys, if they want the consoles to stay relevant, they may explore different console tiers, if that makes sense. Because I kind of think, I don't know, like, is the Series S very successful? I haven't been paying too much attention to Xbox sales. My assumption is that Xbox as a whole, like if you take the amount of Series X and Series S combined, I think that there's still less units sold than the PlayStation 5. But I don't have any proof to back up that claim. I think I read somewhere last year that was the case. I don't know if that's true though. So, yeah, I don't know what how. There's a lot of people saying right now that Microsoft is not going to do another console, like they're done with consoles. I wouldn't go that far. They are definitely behind the curve because they're not, like they haven't actually started developing the new hardware yet. Like they haven't chose a vendor to work with. But I think it's pretty clear Sony has selected AMD for the PlayStation 6. So I don't know. Cost per transistor has remained flat. So basically, they're either going to make 2 consoles. One is going to be more expensive. So they'll probably have like a $500 PlayStation 6 and a $700 PlayStation 6. That'll be my guess. 500 or maybe 400 and 600 or 400 and 650. I don't know. Something like this. Series S is really successful in third world countries. Don't know in the rest of the world. Okay. Yeah, I'd be curious to know how many Series S has already sold. All I know is PlayStation 5 was so popular that you couldn't get one for like 2 years. Like it was near impossible to get a PS5 at launch, and then all the way through 2021 you couldn't get one. And then like the first half of most of 2022 you couldn't even get one. Yeah, you couldn't even get one in 2022. So they only started becoming readily available at the end of 2022, which was basically the 2-year mark. So it was like 2 years into the console's lifespan. You couldn't even buy a console regularly. So that to me indicates that they sold a lot. It wasn't always like that for Xbox. I think Series S was kind of easy to get. I don't think it was a problem. No, well, I mean, it affected Microsoft also. It was hard to get a Series X for a long time, for like a year. But I know Series S was not that hard to get. Like those you could get a Series S in 2021. Like not every place had one, but you could get one. I remember that was like the only one. Like it was easier to find. In some places, it was actually easier to find Series S than like a Nintendo Wii or not Wii, a Nintendo Switch. But I think we're supposed to get a new Switch console this year also. Although no one said anything, so I have no idea what Nintendo's doing. Here we couldn't find both, only if you went to a store or something. That's what I'm saying. Like you could find the Series S in a store. You could not find one online. And then the Series X you couldn't get anywhere for like a year. And then PlayStation 5 you could not get one for 2 years. Do you believe the rumors of now first party Sony titles until that of no first party? I don't know. Uh yeah, I think I do believe it. Now that I think about it, like when was they just put out a Spider-Man game. And before that there was a God of War game. So, and then before that, there was a Ratchet and Clank game. So it's like, and then there was a Horizon game like 2 years ago. So, and those Horizon games take like 3 to 5 years to produce. So I don't think we're gonna see anything for a while. Yeah, no, not this year. Yeah, I believe it. It makes sense. Think about it. Think about their first party titles. They've got the Naughty Dog games. So they've got Horizon. What else do they have? They've got Ratchet and Clank. They have Spider-Man. Like Ratchet and Clank was what year? 2021? 2022 was Horizon Forbidden West and God of War Ragnarok. 2023 was Spider-Man 2. So 2024, like unless they're gonna do something with the Uncharted series, which I don't see that happening anytime soon. Yeah, they don't really have anything. Oh, The Last of Us 2 multiplayer got canned. Oh, The Last of Us Part 2 remake was January on the PS5. So they did put out that, I guess. So I guess that counts. So technically, like if you go talk to Sony's executives, they're like, "What are you talking about? We already put out a first-party game in 2024. It's called The Last of Us Part 2 on PS5." So as far as they're concerned, they probably already checked that box. So Sony owns Bungie. Does anybody know what Bungie's working on? Like I have no idea what they do now. Microsoft, both of them have bought so many gaming companies or game dev companies, and Microsoft in particular has bought so many companies. I would hope that we would start seeing stuff like before 2026, because there's no way that they haven't been working on stuff. But man, Microsoft's strategy is so different from Sony's. We talked about this last stream, so I'm not really going to bring that up again, but their strategies are diverging. Clearly, they're diverging. Sony is still trying to keep the aging console business model alive as long as possible, whereas I think Microsoft is trying to lean into selling you a subscription service and get recurring revenue that way and forget about having to sell consoles at a loss. Sony asked Bungie that daily. Yeah, I don't know. You know the one game that is going to probably help the consoles though is it's not Final Fantasy VII. It is GTA 6. GTA 6 from Rockstar is coming out next year on the consoles as timed exclusive. So that is going to help the console stay alive for at least the rest of this generation. But yeah, the PlayStation 6 is probably 2027, guys. So this is still like 3.5 years away. Microsoft is really multiplayer centric. They can't make one multi. they can't make a multiplayer game that lasts. But they're wait, hold on, I don't understand. You're saying that they're multiplayer. They focus on multiplayer, but they can't make a multiplayer game that lasts. Don't a lot of people still play Halo Infinite though? Isn't that still pretty popular? Technically, doesn't Microsoft also own all of the Blizzard things like World of Warcraft since they merged with Activision? Hey, that's so much that you catch Xbox roundtable discussion. Oh, that's actually, we were going to talk about that. I guess we can jump into this. Next generation Xbox to deliver the largest technical leap ever seen, boasts Phil Spencer. Yeah, I've got it right here. Do we want to hear some of this? Like, do we want to listen to some of this? Let's see.
Well, let's just go and tackle the exclusivity question, because I know it's on the minds of a lot of people. We hear from the community, and that's an important input for us. So we made the decision that we're going to take 4 games to the other consoles, just 4 games, not a change to our kind of fundamental exclusive strategy. We're making these decisions for some specific reasons.
4 games.
We make
four
every decision
games.
really with the long-term health of Xbox in mind. And long-term health of Xbox means...
Okay, long-term health of Xbox in mind, but that does not mean anything about PlayStation. They can let PlayStation die, they don't care.
Means a growing
Which is rightfully so, because that's their competitor.
Building the best platform for creators, reaching as many players as we can. We're always looking to learn as a leadership team and to grow. And we think this is an interesting point in time for us to use what some of the other platforms have right now to help grow our franchises. So we're going to do that.
So these 4 titles, what are they? Can you say?
I'm not going to name those games. The teams that are building those games have announced plans that are not too far away. As we know, game teams put a lot of energy into their announcements with the partners. So I don't want to take anything away from those teams. So I won't be talking about the titles specifically, but I think when they come out, it'll make sense.
Can we say if either of those titles are Starfield or Indiana Jones?
They are not Starfield or Indiana Jones.
Well,
Okay, so they're not Starfield or Indiana Jones. So I guess that was very specific. Like, I'm surprised she chose to ask about those 2 games specifically. To be honest, I don't think the PlayStation not having Starfield is a huge loss. I'll just say that. I'll leave it at that. Starfield, especially on console where there's like no mods, I don't think that's a huge miss for Team Blue or Team Sony. Phil looks like a young old man or an old young man. What? What does that even mean? Phil Spencer has been around forever, but he also looks like he hasn't really changed much. Like, if you go back and watch like videos about Xbox from like E3s from like 12 years ago, 15 years ago, I mean, he still looks the same. So he's doing something right. He knows the ways of the Force. He's probably a Jedi in disguise, just no one knows it. So, there's stuff about him, like, the public doesn't need to know. So, who knows? He might even be a superhero. Like, this is his day job, and he's probably who knows, right? It's Phil Spencer.
What was the criteria in how the team was thinking about selecting those 4 titles?
Let me start a little bit outside of that, and then I'll get to the 4 specific games that we're talking about right now. Because the fundamental decision driver for any decision that we make, anything we're going to talk about today, is the long-term health of Xbox. That we're running a growing platform that's reaching more players, that our games are having as much success as possible. And I do have a fundamental belief that over the next 5 or 10 years,
what I want to know is
exclusive games that are exclusive to one piece of hardware, are going to be a smaller and smaller part of the game industry.
Are they going to talk about the next? Oh, here we go. We'll skip to Xbox.
So we're talking about the role that hardware plays for creators, for the games and those communities. What about the role that hardware plays for us as a business, for Xbox?
When we look at our hardware, it really is, and Phil said this earlier, it's where you get like the most flagship seminal experience of Xbox. And it also represents a developer target. Our developers can build the specs of our hardware, and we invest to make sure they know when they do that, that the games are going to run great on our hardware, but they're also going to be able to be accessed across any screen because of all the other investments we make. So we're giving them an easy way to access as many players as possible.
See,
And we actually have more creators right now building for Xbox.
yeah, see, this has been their strategy though. This is their long-term strategy, and it's starting to come to the surface. Their goal is to convert the gaming industry into a subscription-based business model, very much like the streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, Paramount Plus, Disney Plus. Microsoft envisions the gaming market as something that's parallel to the movie industry and that kind of thing. Because when you think about it, they bought all these companies that make video games. So making video games, especially like AAA games, has gotten to the point where it's very much like making a live action film. You have to hire actors and actresses for the body motion capture if you want to have realistic looking movements in the game for the characters. You have to hire voice actors to do all the voice dialogue. You got to write, like writers, scenario writers, game level designers. You basically have to have like the whole thing, environment people, artists. Like it's very much like making a movie. So Microsoft internally thinks that, I'm sure this is the way they think because you've already seen them state, like literally in this podcast, what they plan to do. They're trying to turn the gaming market into a subscription-based consumption business model as opposed to traditional, I buy a video game in the store or I buy it online through digital means and I download the game and now I have like a right to use license to run the game if it's like on Steam, for example, or whatever the console is that I'm running the game on. Whereas they don't really want that. They want it so that it's, in their mind, by doing this, they make it more accessible because they're taking away the physical aspect of owning the game, because it's like if you, like in the old, think about it like this, right? Like if you have the disc, like you can only play the game if you have the physical disc. Meanwhile, if you have the game digitally, you can play it on whatever platform you're playing it on, as long as that digital copy is compatible with that platform. So that's what they're trying to do. I mean, that's their long-term vision, is turn the gaming industry into a subscription-based model, and that way they can recognize recurring revenue. Why do they need to have recurring revenue? Because if you're a very large company that has a lot of overhead, there's a lot of middle management, there's a lot of, it's just a really big company, very wide moat, large market capitalization. You cannot just like stick to this loss leader business model. Oh, I sell my Xbox at a loss, but I'll make back the money on subscription service, all that stuff. Why even bother with like taking the loss on the hardware to begin with if you're just going to sell a subscription? You know what I mean? Like Netflix doesn't have to do that. Netflix used to send the DVDs in the mail. Like Netflix used to be physical media based, just like Blockbuster and the old VHS those days. But they went from DVD to fully digital. So Microsoft's like, well, why do we need to be physical / digital right to use license keys? Why don't we just do away with that and just do subscription service just like Netflix? It's easier for us. It's easier for the end user. A lot of people don't like that because there's a lot of people that are in favor of the like the right to own the game, like the physical disc, or like the actual right to use license key. So it's one of those things where it's like you will own nothing and you will be happy. Like it's that sort of counter argument to this. But I don't know. I feel like this is kind of the ultimate end game for a lot of things when it comes to entertainment forms like this, like gaming in general.
Xbox than ever before by
Thousands.
nature,
Yeah.
thousands of them by nature of those investments. And we got more to come. There's some exciting stuff coming out in hardware that we're going to share this holiday. And we're also investing.
Did you hear what she just said? Hold on a second. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What did she just say? Hold up. Hold up. Next gen. Wait, what? There's some exciting stuff coming out in hardware.
Exciting stuff coming out in hardware that we're going to share.
We're going to share this holiday, aka Q4 this year.
This holiday, and we're also invested in the next
generation roadmap, which means that they probably are going to make another Xbox to replace the Series X. So they're not done. This is basically confirming that they're not done with consoles yet.
Generation roadmap. And what we're really focused on there is delivering the largest technical leap you will have ever seen.
The largest technical leap that you have ever seen in a hardware generation.
A hardware generation, which makes it better for players and better for creators and the
vision they're building. See, okay, so there we go. Those are the answers, and that doesn't mean just a new controller. Like, that's not a significant upgrade just by new controller. Wow, there's a lot of comments that I missed. There's a lot of comments. They don't own Minecraft and Blizzard games are technically what? They announced Diablo 4 coming to Game Pass in March. Bungie was the only good when they made Halo, but didn't Bungie also make Destiny though? Wasn't Destiny really popular? Bungie went downhill even more after Activision. Did Activision own Bungie, or wait, what was the story with Bungie? I think Sony bought Bungie. What was the story with Destiny? I don't even remember when that game came out. And there was Destiny 2. Bungie employees that left once they left. Microsoft, since once you lost core devs, you keep getting worse. No Man's Sky revealed a new mega update today. E3. Wait, did someone mention E3 in the thing? I think Microsoft apprehension of settling on their next-gen console is AI implementation. What are they gonna... Oh, well, I mean, I guess. I think... Yeah, because the thing is AI, right? Like, they're going to have an AI in their next console. Sony will probably have one, too. Why wouldn't they? Like, the fact that we just talked about AMD's NPU in the 8040 processors earlier, at the very beginning of the stream... Those things can easily be integrated into PlayStation 6 and whatever the new Xbox will end up being called. They're going to implement Windows 12 in the next console. They should. I don't see why they shouldn't. I've been saying this for years. I really think like the consoles should just turn into like heavily subsidized gaming PCs. That's literally what I think they need to do. Like, just take Windows 12 and just put it on a new console, call it a console, give it full keyboard mouse support, and that's it. You know, like, give it like a Bluetooth mouse and keyboard in addition to the Xbox controller. Or, like, sell it with the standard controller, and then if someone wanted to, they could buy the official Xbox keyboard and mouse wireless Bluetooth combo and use that as well. If they wanted to sit in front of their, the TV big screen in the living room and have the keyboard and mouse on like a coffee table or something, do it that way. I think Sony should do the same thing though. See, my approach to both of them is I think Microsoft should just do Windows 12 on the next Xbox, and Sony should make like their own custom distro of Linux and make that the operating system for the PlayStation 6. Kind of like what Steam did with the Steam Deck. Sony should just basically copy what Steam did and just put like a Linux-based gaming console out in the market next time. With full mouse and keyboard support. Exactly, Sony OS. They should, seriously, like they should do that. I don't understand why they haven't done this. Like, it's mind-boggling to me that the thing is, here's the thing, guys. Sony is, technically, people will say Sony is winning the console war because the PS5 outsells the Xbox. That's not really going to matter in the long run. That really doesn't matter because, like I said in the last live stream, if you can't beat your competitor, in this case, Microsoft can't win against Sony in the traditional console war, what do? You change the way the game is played. You literally change the rules of the game and you rewrite the way the game is played. Nvidia did this with the whole RTX thing back in 2018 when they introduced ray tracing for gaming, on RTX 20 series. That is what I consider that is what a market analyst would call as an inflection point in the market, or a pivotal moment where it starts redefining how you grade things. You know what I mean? That's literally changing the way the rules of the game are played. Doing stuff like that. Microsoft is doing that with Game Pass. They're literally doing this with Game Pass. The fact that you can get all these games for free via the subscription, you can play on Xbox, you can play on PC via Microsoft Store, Xbox gaming app, whatever. Like, that is rewriting the rules of how the game is played. Sony doesn't have the best record regarding software development. They could partner with Valve for R&D. They're not going to partner with Valve, though, because Valve is a competitor. Like, they can't really do that. I mean, I don't know. That would be really weird if they actually did that. They could. I'm not saying they can't do that. The fact that they're bringing more of their first-party games to the PC, like via the Steam platform and Epic Game Store, that shows that they are kind of opening up to other platforms that are not native PlayStation platforms. But I don't really see them doing that. But man, yeah, I think there's a big problem with Japanese companies that are run by, well, see, Sony is a multinational, so I shouldn't say that, because I don't know if the same traditional business practices apply to them at this point, since they are such a large multinational company. But like, the thing with the Japanese companies, they typically are much slower to adopt newer ways of doing things. They basically will take forever to develop one way of doing something, but they'll have perfected that so well that they can basically get by on that business model for decades. And clearly Sony's succeeded in that regard. But when someone comes in who has a lot of money and tries to compete with you and you still manage to beat them, eventually they're going to rewrite the rules. They're going to use their money and power to rewrite the rules and pull the rug right from under you. And that's exactly what Microsoft is doing. They already sell on Steam and said, yeah. But see, do you see why that doesn't help them in the long run? Putting their games on Steam it's overall, it's a good thing. It's just not good for the longevity of their them as a first party. Because think about Sega. If Sony keeps doing that, like if Sony no longer makes consoles and they just put out their games on Steam like everyone else, and they just kind of like bow out, like you do realize that means that's the end of the PlayStation brand. Think about Sega. Look at Sega. Dreamcast, the last Sega console. Where is Sega today in terms of how people perceive Sega as a juggernaut gaming company? Mostly what Sega does now is pachinko parlor gambling slot machines in Tokyo and other parts of Japan, and like old school like arcade stuff. And they still make games. Like, they still have the Sonic franchise. They have the rhythm games, like the Hatsune Miku game, like that franchise. They own that IP. But Sega is nothing. They're like literally a shadow of what they were 20 years ago. And that's because they're no longer a thing, right? Like, no one knows. Like, the average Gen Z probably doesn't even know who Sega is. I wouldn't be surprised, but they know who Sony is. They still know who Sony is. They might not be that interested in PlayStation, but they still know who they are. So that's the thing. Like, you give that up and you just put your games on Steam and just throw in the towel, you basically just become like Sega. as far as I'm concerned. Just split what? Spitball what? Oh. No, it's a big deal though. Like, yeah, this is the thing, because on the one end, you have Microsoft changing the rules of the game, and you guys do realize that ultimately, Microsoft, they see Sony as a competitor, obviously, but I think they're looking more long term. Like, Microsoft is definitely more focused on the long term, how they're going to win in the long run. And they're not going to stop with defeating Sony. They're going after Steam. They're going after Valve. 100% they want to defeat Valve and Steam, bring them down. Because it's like Windows, that's their operating system. Steam has just kind of like lived on Windows forever at this point, and now they're branching out with like Steam Deck, and you can install Steam on Linux, but you know, there's still a lot that needs to be done there, and the fact that most people don't even use Linux, so it's not really a good alternative. But Microsoft has control over the Windows platform, so, and they want to basically become the go-to brand on their PC platform, which is, you know, their OS. So Steam is kind of the juggernaut. The thing is, I said this before, I'll say it again. Microsoft at one point wanted to buy Discord. Can you imagine what would happen if Microsoft attempts to buy Discord again and it actually happens and they succeed? Like, if Microsoft gains Discord, Steam is in big, big trouble. Like, big trouble if Microsoft buys Discord. Because Discord, if Microsoft combines Discord with the Xbox gaming app from the Microsoft Store, now they literally went from like being down here, where Steam's like up here, to like, oh, now we're like here. Now we're actually better than you. You know, if they gain Discord because of like Discord streaming ability, game share with like viewers and channels and stuff like that, if that becomes Microsoft's property, then wow, okay, it's like that's like that's like shots fired straight at Steam right there, and I don't know what Steam can really do to respond. So like the main thing with Steam is the reason why a lot of people use Steam is because it's been around for so long. But if you think about it, Steam hasn't really changed much over the years. Like, I'll probably go so far as to say that Steam has actually kind of stagnated. The only thing that they've done recently that's unique is the Steam Deck. So I don't really know what Valve's strategy is to compete with Microsoft, because Steam doesn't have any subscription-based services. As far as I know, Microsoft does. But Microsoft, you can still buy the games traditionally on the Microsoft Store, assuming they're on the platform. So Steam is kind of coasting. Microsoft is definitely fighting a very aggressive battle now. They're like really amping up their attacks. And Sony is kind of like, I don't want to say Sony's floundering. I feel like Sony is just kind of failing to adapt at the speed that they need to stay relevant. So Steam is kind of stagnant. Sony is kind of like slow to figure out what they need to do. And then Microsoft is just all firing on all cylinders. And I think this podcast kind of points that out. So they're still going to compete with Sony. According to this, I mean, based off of what she said, they're going to continue to compete with Sony, at least for the PS6 generation. But who knows what happens after that? They really want to go to a subscription-based service. They want to turn gaming into a Netflix kind of deal. Maybe not exactly streaming games the way like Google Stadia worked, but you know, they want to compete with Steam directly and eventually defeat them. That's kind of the ultimate goal. PS6 may be the last original console. Nintendo, yeah, Nintendo, man, Nintendo is so like, I don't even know where to begin with Nintendo. The thing with Nintendo, though, that I think a lot of people in the West, well, do I really want to say that? I guess a lot of people that do not live in large urban populated cities Like, if you don't live in a place like Tokyo, New York, London, Berlin, etc., right? Like, if you don't live in those super overcrowded cities, then your typical gaming platform is probably going to be the PC, assuming you play AAA games to begin with. There's an assumption there. The assumption is that the person plays AAA games. How do they play those games? Well, the largest platform for AAA games is the PC. It surpassed the consoles a while ago. That's the other reason why Microsoft doesn't really see consoles as a long-term good investment. And that's why I feel like Sony is they need to figure something out. So if that's the case, that means that Nintendo would be irrelevant if not for their first parties. Now, the reason why Nintendo is still relevant is because the vast majority of people who live in these overcrowded urban cities across the globe, they might have like a 30-minute commute to work or school on a train or a bus or some kind of public transportation where they're not physically having to drive themselves. So assuming that's the case, they always have like 30 minutes, like an hour a day roughly, to devote to playing a game. So they could be playing the game on a mobile phone. That's why the mobile market is the biggest market globally for gaming. Or they could be playing it on a Nintendo Switch because the Switch is a portable console. And that's the reason why Nintendo is still relevant. I feel like a lot of people who don't live in that environment, they don't understand that. Like, they don't understand how Nintendo is still alive, or they don't understand how Nintendo is still one of the big three, so to speak. Then there's the Apple Vision. It'll be a game changer. Isn't Apple Vision like a VR or an AR thing? I thought that was VR. Apple Vision is VR, right? Or augmented reality, AR? When PS6 launches via next, we get a Tesla and play your game on the way to work. Well, see, that's I was thinking of that too. I was thinking of talking about like self-driving cars, but we're not quite there yet. But see, the people who live in these like ultra-urban large cities or these metropolitan areas, like Tokyo, for example. Tokyo has like 35 million people in the greater city area. 35 million people, like there's not enough like road space to fit cars on the road for that. So most people, they will commute to work using public transportation. So if you're sitting on a train, if you're sitting on a bus, you might as well just play on the Nintendo Switch or whatever if you're going to be on there for like 40 minutes one way. So, you know what I'm saying? So that's the reason why the Switch is still very popular in certain parts of the world. That's why we need flying cars. Yeah. I mean, which do you think is better, though? Flying cars or self-driving cars? See, the idea behind self-driving cars is the cars only... The AI controlling the cars is supposed to manage and optimize traffic flow relative to other cars on the road. That way, you don't get a lot of these weird traffic jams due to congestion because the cars are constantly like in optimal positions in their lanes relative to each other. So it's supposedly, from what I've seen, self-driving cars are going to result, like if all the cars are self-driving, 100% self-driving on the roads, you don't get a lot of traffic jams because what can cause congestion? I'm not talking about a car accident. I'm talking about what leads to a buildup of a long line of cars in an exit lane, for example. Well, it's people that are changing lanes too often for no reason. because like if someone gets into the exit lane, but they don't need to exit, or someone stays in the exit lane but they're not exiting for like 20 minutes, and then if someone else is getting onto the highway into that exit lane, that already is going to create a bottleneck in that one lane. So that's supposed to be solved mostly with self-driving cars. So stuff like that. So I don't like flying cars. I don't even know what that solves, because you would still have to have boundaries. You can't just like fly around. Well, airspace would be really weird. I don't know. I don't know how that would work. So let's see what else. AMD rolls out goodies for RDNA 4 at Linux, slowly approaching complete. So this is something, the only reason why I'm pointing this out is because we could be seeing some relatively interesting hardware this year that is not necessarily the highest end stuff. So I think it's pretty clear at this point we're going to see possibly RDNA 4, although I have no idea when. And the other one, it would be Intel's Battlemage. Intel Battlemage and AMD's RDNA 4 could be very interesting when they come out, but not in the sense that they would be like the fastest GPUs on the planet. No, they wouldn't be interesting in that regard, because I don't expect them to be that. I think most people that have been leaking stuff about them also would agree that they're not going to be those sort of things. So, I think what we're going to see is RDNA 4 is going to be it's going to be pretty high end for what it offers. And Intel's Battlemage is going to be a pretty good option for the upper mid-range, is my understanding at this point, based off of the math. So, like if someone's wanting to see like an RDNA 4 versus a Battlemage showdown, most likely RDNA 4 is going to win. I feel like the thing with Battlemage is there's just so much ground that Intel has to make up that I think it's asking too much to expect them to catch up to RDNA 4 with Battlemage. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think if anyone thinks that it is going to happen, they're probably setting themselves up for some big disappointment. Most likely Computex. Oh, wait, what was the question? Oh, Apple Vision? Hold on, there was a comment about Apple Vision. You should see the gaming videos of the Apple Vision. It has Steam streaming compatibility. Doesn't the Meta Quest 3 also have that? But the Meta Quest is like significantly cheaper. Yeah, I have to look into the Apple thing. I know more about the Meta Quest 3. Mainly because it's far more affordable. Apple Vision is just stupid expensive. Did you see the new Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 leak on YouTube? No. I haven't looked at any... Wait, the Arctic... There's what is that, a liquid cooler? Oh. RDNA 4 is... I don't know. The fact that there's leaks about the Linux drivers, though, that means that it's actually closer than I thought. My assumption was this would be at the end of the year. But that might not be the case. It might come sooner. I think Nvidia's GPU will be at the end of the year. Or, well, not the very end of the year, but like October, November is kind of when I expect Nvidia's RTX 5090. Fall to winter is when you expect what to release? The RDNA 4 or the Nvidia card? Or the Battlemage card? So that kind of leads us into... Wait, what does it say here? Just, okay. So that kind of leaves us here. So I'll remove this. So let's try to figure out... I guess I didn't need to put all these out. So let's do another one here. Let's call this 2024 hardware release schedule. Okay, let's try to figure out when these things are coming out. So Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. RDNA4 rumored for mid-late summer. Computex is normally late spring. So Computex we already know. It's always the end of May, beginning of June. It's like the very beginning of June. That's Computex. So that's Q2 is Computex. It's the same every year. It's basically not quite the halfway point of the year. So what do we get here? The 40 Super. And we got another thing. This. We got these. This was Q1. That was Q1. Oh, and I guess Ryzen 8700G. That and Ryzen 5700X 3D. So there were some stuff in Q1. Not very interesting things. I mean, I watched Gerbauer's video on the 8700G. He delidded it. It was cool to see. It was a monolithic die. The rest of this stuff is not really that interesting. 5700X3 is a bunch of leftover 5800X3Ds that weren't as well binned. So they're basically lower tier 5800X3Ds. Which is fine. They're cheap, so it's okay. RTX 40 Super. The 4070 Super is good. The 4070 Ti is not that great, although it is a little bit. I mean, it is better because it's better value. The fact that it's 16 gigabytes at the same price as the original, whereas the original was a measly 12 gigabytes for that much money, which is awful. And then the 4080 Super is the one that everybody wants for some reason, even though it's really not that different from the original 4080. But it's $200 less MSRP. So it's like, unless you're buying a Founders Edition, like, it's almost like, unless you're buying one of these, it's kind of not worth it, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I would rather, like, wait if I couldn't get one at the actual MSRP and not pay a cent more. So that's kind of my opinion on the hardware. And then the 7600 XT 16 gigabyte, that one is like a factory overclocked 8 gigabyte card, which is such a bizarre name choice. So I don't know. That one doesn't really do a whole lot. The 7600 XT is basically like AMD's answer to Intel's A770 16 gigabyte, except AMD's card is faster in pretty much everything except ray tracing. But at that resolution and at that tier, does anybody really care about RT? So, and it consumes less power than the A770 also. So yeah, you forgot the 3050 6 gigabyte. Oh, was that actually this? Was that Q1? Oh, yeah, you're right. I think it was. Yeah. Oh, wow. RTX 3050. Oh, that's right. It was the one that's worse. The 3050 6 gigabyte is slower than the original RTX 3050. That's right. That is hilarious. So, wow, that's pretty bad. Hey, Jay. Yeah, so this is Q1. So we got a bunch of Q1 hardware. What's coming out in Q2? So Q2, April, May, June. So we know Computex is June. Do we expect any major hardware releases to come out in Q2? I feel like Q2 is going to be very boring. Do you guys get the feeling that Q2 is going to be very boring? I mean, Q1 has also been... No, Q1 is not boring. Like, if you're someone who is into video games, I feel like Q1 is, like, the most interesting quarter of the entire year. Like literally. Like what is a big game that's coming out in Q3 or 4 of this year? Name a game besides Dawn Trail, because that's just the MMO expansion. Oh, like, isn't there a WoW expansion coming out this year? I don't even know what it's called. I guess it was like a World of... Okay, so it's like, if the biggest things that people can talk about are MMO expansions, when is Indiana Jones coming out? I keep hearing people mention that game, and I keep forgetting to look up that game. When is that? Because I think the last time I looked, it was like to be determined when that's coming out. Do we have an actual release date for that? Does anybody know when that game's coming out? All it says is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is scheduled for release in 2024 for Windows and as a console exclusive for Xbox Series X and S. That's all it says. So there's no actual release date given. So I have no idea when that's coming out. If it's even coming out. I mean, it says it's this year, but we don't know when. If they don't say, it's probably toward the end of the year, though. So... Oh, did anybody say? I mean, there was something online that says it's supposed to come out this year, but I don't have an actual release date. So Q2, I don't think there's anything. I really think there's like nothing. Is Intel launching Battlemage in Q2? I highly doubt it. So that leaves Q3. So what is coming out in Q3? Zen 5 and the X870E. That's coming in Q3. What else? Yeah. Besides Zen 5, like I think Battlemage. Shouldn't Battlemage come out in Q3? I feel like the longer Intel waits. See, I'm under the impression that RDNA 4 is actually Q4. But maybe. I feel like if they wanted to, they could do RDNA 4, but I don't know. See, I'm going to put question marks if I don't actually know. Like, I'm pretty confident Zen 5 is coming out in the summer. I don't see why it wouldn't. Or Q3. So basically, it could come out anytime in July, August, or September. AI-powered dishwasher by Samsung. See, I feel like these two... For some reason, I keep thinking that we're going to see Battlemage before we see RDNA 4. But it would seem, based off of the leaks that we're getting, and these articles that we're seeing, that it might be the other way around. It could just be that Intel... It could also be that less media outlets are interested in Battlemage, so there's less digging in terms of trying to find the answers on when they're coming out. You really think those are coming out that late? I don't know. I feel like that would be kind of weird if those come out that late. I'm just gonna kind of leave that there. And Q4 is PS5 Pro, RTX 5090, and maybe 5080. You guys think those are coming out? I know 5090 is coming out. I don't know about the other one. Didn't ARC get delayed 1 or 2 times? If so, what do you think the same? Possibly. I mean, no, I know it got delayed like 4 times. ARC was supposed to come out in... What was the original? Like... Winter 22? Or no. Like spring 23? No, what am I talking about? It came out in 22. No, I'm way off. It was supposed to come out in like spring 22. Then it got delayed to summer 22. Then it got delayed to fall 22. So it got delayed 3 times, at least. I don't know. Do you think that's going to happen to Battlemage? If that happens again, I feel like Intel has some serious. They've got some serious problems if they have this many. There's going to be clearly some scrutiny and a lack of competence if it gets delayed so much like that. Because they are supposed to stick to a roadmap, and if it keeps going, like, okay, I guess if they go to October, it will literally be 24 months on the dot between the A770 and the Battlemage, because A770 was October 2022. So if they go into Q4, it'll literally be 2 years. So they could do it. Maybe they will do it. Who knows? I kind of think it needs to be Q3 though for it to actually make a dent. Otherwise, see, here's the problem, guys. Like, I think. Can you imagine? Hold up. Let me delete this stuff. Let's redo this. Zen 5. Can you imagine if how dumb does that look? Do you know how top-heavy this looks? I'm not saying this can't happen. I'm saying that if this happens, this is garbage if that happens. Like, if everything gets dumped at the very end of the year, like it did, like, in 2022, that's terrible. Can you imagine? There's a console. There's new Nvidia. There's new Intel GPU. There's new AMD GPU. There's new Intel CPU. Like, that's super backloaded heavy. Shipping by boat? What? Shipping by boat? What does that have to do with that? RDNA, well, are you sure? Because I have not heard anything about RDNA 3 being Q3. It could be, though. It could be. I'm surprised a lot of people seem to think this is Q3 instead of this. I don't understand why people don't think this should be Q3. RDNA 4 and the 4 stands for Q4. What is the 4? Oh, Q4. I get it. His name is Tom. Yeah, I think, are we leaving anything out? Yeah, so the thing is, here, let's delete that again. If it becomes this, if this is true, this is going to be a repeat of 2019. This is going to be a repeat of 2019 if that's the case. Because what came out in Q3 of 2019? Do we all remember? Zen 2 and RDNA 1, 5700 XT and the 3900X. They launched together on, I believe, July 7th, 2019. You guys can look it up and see if I'm right. But if I remember correctly, this is a fact of life. So that means that AMD could do something similar. And if you guys remember, this was kind of like it was like a pivot for AMD. Like, remember, because before AMD had the Radeon 7. When did the Radeon 7 launch? Radeon 7. If I remember correctly, it was February 7th, 2019. You guys can look it up and see if I'm right. But that would mean that Radeon 7 launched the same exact year as the 5700 XT. Which means AMD launched their final GCN flagship the same year that they introduced RDNA 1. So they could do something like that. Well, okay, not something like that because they didn't really have a flagship introduced around now. But if you guys think about how the 5700 XT was very much on par with Radeon 7, but it used way less electricity and it was a newer architecture. So it was way more efficient at rasterization compared to the Radeon 7. I think we could see a repeat of this summer. If RDNA 4 comes out this summer, that would mean that we're looking at something that is kind of like 5700 XT, which means it will be very similar in rasterization to whatever AMD's fastest card of the previous generation is. So in this case, the XTX. Or something very similar. Because remember, the 5700 XT, in some cases, was actually faster than Radeon 7. And in a lot of cases, it was a little bit slower than Radeon 7. So if we go to the modern era, the fastest card they have today is the XTX. So RDNA 4 could end up rivaling the XTX in some games. It could even be a little bit faster than it in certain things. Just like how the 5700 XT was more efficient and faster than Radeon 7 in some things. And in particular, I suspect that RDNA 4 will be significantly better at ray tracing than the XTX while using less power than the XTX. Just like this card. So we could be looking at a summer release for Zen 5 plus RDNA 4. I feel like that is a very good window of opportunity for AMD to kind of make their move in the chess game, so to speak, and put their stuff out there and get people to buy into their stuff in the summer, the back to school season, etc., whatever. So I feel like, yeah, I'm kind of on board with that after thinking about it this way, looking at what they did in 2019, the Zen 2 thing, the RDNA 1 thing. So yeah, it could be like this. How much VRAM will RDNA 4 have? My guess is 16 gigabytes of VRAM is what I would guess. Here's my guess. So we can make our guesses now on that. So let me remove these things. So here's what I think, guys. I think that RDNA 4, I'm going to make my declaration now. You guys can see if you guys disagree or whatever. I think it's going to be a 256-bit memory interface with 16 gigabytes of VRAM. This will be the quote-unquote the RDNA 4 flagship offering will have these kind of specs. I think this is what it will be. Because I really feel like this is a repeat of the 5700 XT. What was that? It was a 256-bit, 8GB card that competed with the RTX 2080 and the 20. It was like between the 2080 and the 2070. And then Nvidia did the whole super thing, and they put 2070 Super like literally right there up against the 5700 XT. So that's kind of where I see this sitting. Very, very similar spec-wise to the 5700 XT, except with double the memory of the old card. Remember me, 32 gigs for the toxic work card. The workstation card will be 32 gigabytes, yes. So if you guys, it's very easy to figure out the workstation card. All you do is you take whatever the normal card is and you multiply the VRAM by 2. And that gives you the number. So 32 will be the professional card. 8800 XT, 16 gigabyte, 8800 XTX. Maybe. Max brings up a good point. What about like a 24 gigabyte? The thing is, if it's 24 gigabytes, it would have to have a different memory interface. And all the things that I'm going off of what I've heard a lot of people say. And a lot of people keep on bringing up this 5700 XT, like a repeat of the 5700 XT. Well, that would be 256-bit, and that would be 16 gigabytes. So, unless they do something drastically different and make a much larger die that could justify 384 and 24 gigabyte capacity, I don't know if they would do that. I think that might be RDNA 5. We don't really need... So the thing is, guys, we don't really need more than 20 gigabytes today, even at 4K. So realistically, the thing that really would benefit from the VRAM are like AI apps, running like LLMs, those sort of things, PyTorch. That stuff can use like 20 plus gigabytes of VRAM very easily. But games, not really. If you want more VRAM, wait for GDDR7. VRAM capacity doesn't determine how fast. Yeah, it doesn't determine how fast it is. So, but that's the thing, right? Like, we're talking about a card that is going to be able to rival the RDNA 3 384-bit 24 gigabyte flagship. We're talking about a card that's going to be able to go toe-to-toe with the XTX and the 4080. But it's going to be cheaper to produce, smaller die, and, you know, obviously they're saving money by going with this smaller memory interface and less amount of VRAM. So... yeah, but it doesn't actually increase it that much. 20 gigabyte VRAM is... oh, okay. I see what Marcelo's saying. Marcelo is saying that it's going to be... It's going to be like this card. Because isn't there already a card like this? Isn't this already the 7900 XT? Isn't that what that is? I think I'm right. I think that's a 70. This is 7900 XT is this. And this is a 7900 XTX. Isn't that right? Yes, Matt's saying yes. Okay, so if they do what Marcelo's saying, they're gonna make a successor to this. Well, they're gonna make something that's the same as the 7900 XT. So, that's an interesting thing I didn't really think about. I still don't think they're going to do that. I still stand by my original prediction. I still think it's going to be this. I really think it's going to be this. I really think AMD is going to make something that has a similar memory interface size-wise to the RTX 4080, and it performs basically like an RTX 4080. So it's like the Radeon version, if you will, of the RTX 4080. It will have better ray tracing than RDNA 3. It has the same memory interface and memory amount as the RTX 4080. And it will perform very similar to the RTX 4080 in rasterization. So it's almost like a carbon copy of the 4080, except it is a Team Red based 4080. That is what I think RDNA 4 will be. A Radeon version of the RTX 4080. And we'll see if I'm correct in that assumption. But I think, I know I'm oversimplifying it by saying that, but ultimately I think like the easiest way, if someone asked me, like, what is RDNA 4? I'll tell them it is a Radeon version of the RTX 4080. That's pretty much what I expect it to be. So it does show generational leap, because if you guys think about it, AMD had to do this to compete with the 256-bit 4080. And now, granted, it is faster than the 4080 at rasterization, and it should be, because it's got, 384 plus 24 gig. But that doesn't really mean everything. I know the architectures are completely different, but in general, I feel like this is more like a one-for-one comparison in terms of like, okay, this lines up with the 4080 because it's the same 256-bit, it's the same 16 gigabyte amount, and it performs basically identical. So that's what I think we're going to see with RDNA 4, which will be very interesting to see. What I'm curious to know is, what's the power consumption going to look like? And is AMD going to go with the controversial 12 volt high power connector? Now, I highly doubt it. I don't think AMD is going to do that. I don't think they'll need to do that. I think RDNA 4 is probably going to be like a 250 watt TDP GPU, maybe 275 watt, maybe even 300 watt. I don't know, because that's kind of what the 4080 does in terms of power consumption. So I don't think it'll use this connector. I don't think they need to use the connector. Let's just put it this way. It would be unwise if they did, but they could, but I don't think they will. But yeah, that is RDNA 4. Now, let's turn our attention to Battlemage. So now the question is Battlemage coming out in the summer, or is Battlemage coming out in the fall? Let's see what the chat thinks, because this one I have heard even less info on. So at this point, last week I knew probably nothing about RDNA 4. Now, after like reading up a little bit on it, I know way less about Battlemage than I know about RDNA 4. So this one, let's see. Like, do you guys think Intel's GPU is coming out in Q3, which means July, August, September? Or is it coming out in Q4, October, November, December? Maybe Intel is going to do something like this. Maybe they're going to do like Arrow Lake and Battlemage together. Like, I can totally see AMD doing Zen 5 plus RDNA 4, because they did that in 2019 in the summer. Battlemage gonna be I think so. I don't see why it wouldn't. Honestly, guys, Intel is actually not that bad if you don't play any games. That's weird to say that, but if you literally had Arc in your computer and you used it every day just to do like office work and, like use it as a regular computer, it's fine. It doesn't do, it's fine. Like this is fine, like the dog with the house burning down. This is fine. Like, it literally is fine if all you do is just office work and nothing else. It's not going to crash. The screens aren't going to be flickering and all this stuff. No, it doesn't have that problem. The best GPU that doesn't play games, bro. Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you like it is. I mean, I've got one. I've got one in the Threadripper PC right now, and it works fine. So, Larrabee. Okay, here's the thing. Like, if Intel does this, I do think that if Intel does this, the problem with doing this, the Hardware Unbox recent survey revealed ARC owners love it as a cheap AV1 encoder. I guess, but the thing is, the only, well, okay, yeah, I think in that regard, I think they're talking about the A380. They must be talking about the A380, because the thing is, if you really wanted AV1 at the cheapest price possible, the A380 is the only option. But if you realistically only wanted AV1, but you wanted to play games reliably at 1080p, I would say the 7600 is a better deal than the A770 because you get more consistent gaming experiences without the weird occasional issues or the instances where the A770 in particular, well, both of them actually, completely underperform in certain games, like The Last of Us Part 1 as a prime example, and Jedi Survivor. They're pretty garbage in those games. Whereas the 7600 at least is consistent. So, and the 7600 has AV1. And the 7600 is cheaper than the A770. So, I don't know. It depends on when they did that survey, but my guess is I think they're talking about the A380 because I actually wanted to buy an A380 as an AV1 encoder, but I would only buy one if it was a single slot form factor. I'm not going to buy a 2-slot GPU that I'm never going to use for games. That to me is a pointless product. So the Intel Arc A770 is a better GPU than the 7600 for me. It depends on what you're doing. The only thing that's better is the 16 gigabytes. And now that there's the 16 gigabyte XT, I personally think the A770 is kind of dead at this point. 7600 XT, which no one really... I might actually... Well, see, I don't have a 16 gigabyte card. But I reviewed the 7600 last summer, and it was significantly faster than the A770 in pretty much everything except like Quake 2 RTX. So, but again, no one is buying an A770 for ray tracing. Seriously. If building new, 8000G can probably be considered AV1 if you don't. Does it have AV1? Wait, does the 8700G and the 8600G have AV1 on the integrated APU? I did not know that. If they do, then that's the new... Well, see, that's a processor, though. Still a processor. I don't know. I still think the 7600... As far as I'm concerned, the A770, like at this point in time, if you're buying an entry-level GPU, the only choices really are the 7600 or the 4060. That's it. Like, I wouldn't even consider... Because the thing is, guys, like 4060 and 7600, both of them have AV1. So any sort of argument in favor of AV1 has no bearing because both Nvidia and AMD have AV1. So that's not a strong argument. The only argument for the A770 is the 16 gigabytes, which, like I just said, the 7600 XT 16 gigabyte like makes that a pointless argument. So, and this, unless the A770 is like 290 or something, I think the 7600 XT is the better deal because that's like 320, and the A770 is like 340 or so. So it's like, I mean, like I said, if you're gonna play games and you want AV1, the 7600 XT is the more consistent, reliable option. If you want to tinker and play around with the Intel GPU, which is a much, much smaller demographic, then maybe the A770 is still kind of interesting to get. But like, if you're someone who just wants to play games and use AV1 for whatever reason, I think there's better options than the A770, especially now. And this is what I think about when I was thinking, like, this was last year, I came to this conclusion, like, what is Intel's best strategy here? Because they're going to be stuck competing with RDNA 3 budget GPUs, aka 7600, and Nvidia's budget line 4060 GPUs, which is outselling both Intel and AMD's budget GPUs combined. So Yeah, but I feel like if this happens, it's probably more likely that they might actually do this than put Battlemage by itself. I just kind of think that Intel should probably put Battlemage out before Q4 because, see, the problem is if they do this, then we all know that it's going to be a repeat of 2022 where literally RTX 5090 completely eclipses Battlemage. Because how many people remember that the fact that the 4090 and the A770 and A750, all three of those GPUs launched on the exact same day? Do people remember that? Do people remember ARC's launch day? Or do they remember it as the 4090 launch day? This is the reason why I don't really like the idea of Battlemage launching in Q4, because it's just going to get eclipsed by Nvidia's stuff. It's also probably the fact that the PS5 Pro is coming out in the holiday season. That's also going to pull attention away from it. So I don't think, like, if Intel goes into Q4 with Battlemage, they're basically going to be a big nothing burger. No one's going to really talk about them much because all the big YouTubers are going to be and the reviewers are going to be way too preoccupied with RTX 5090 content, just like they were when the 4090 launched. That's basically how it's going to go. So, which is a shame because I feel like Battlemage needs to have its own window of opportunity to launch, like away from other things, so that it can get enough proper attention devoted to it, so that people can talk more about it and people can get more exposure to it. Like if you launch right next to 5090, what do you think is going to happen? Who do you think, which GPU do you think the big reviewers that get review samples are going to talk about? Are they going to talk about Battlemage? Or are they going to talk about 5090? Paper launch in Q3 maybe? They're not really known for delay. Well, GPU delays, but not CPU delays. It is a shame that all the coverage on 90 card is... Yeah, I know, but that's the reality. That's the one that gets all the headlines. So I do like the idea of this, like moving this away from this, because that just kind of, like no one's going to pay attention. So, yeah. Don't forget the fact that the PS5 Pro is coming out too. That's going to pull attention from more of the mainstream audience away from computer hardware. Because if this thing, like, think about it. We haven't talked much about PS5 Pro. PS5 Pro is basically, I'm going to guess that the performance of the PS5 Pro is going to be like a 7700 XT, which means it's basically like a 7800 XT, but because it's power limited and power constrained, because it's in a console form factor, I think the 7800 XT will be faster than the PS5 Pro. That's why I'm thinking hardware-wise, it's more like a 7800 XT, but reality, it's going to run more like a 7700 XT in terms of its actual performance, which is actually not that bad for a console when you think about it. So that's a decent uplift over the original PS5. Because the original PS5 is like a 6700 non-XT. So now we're going to like a 7700 XT on the Pro. So it's not like it's not a full generational leap. But it is a decent improvement, especially probably in the ray tracing. They'll probably be able to do RT better in this console. I don't understand what the obsession with 4K resolution is, though, with console games. I feel like if the console would just render the game at 1440p native or 1080p native and not have to aim for 4K and then do all this upscaling from like 1080p and make it look like a blurry mess, I think the console would be really good if it didn't have to do all of that. But nope, they want to push 4K. You know, everyone's telling me, oh, 4K gaming is a meme. Well, okay, why is it that the consoles focus so heavily on it, if that's the case? It's like, why can't they just let me run my console game at 1080p native and not do upscaling to 4K? Because I'd rather play the game at a locked 60 on console, or even their high refresh 120 mode that they do support in a few games, at 1080p. I'd rather do 1080p 120 on a PlayStation 5 than like 4K 30 with upscaling, or 4K 45 with upscaling, or some weird, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, I don't understand what's up with that. A lot of games are unlocked, so the Pro version will be nice. Do you think they will up the RAM size? No, I don't think so. I think it's going to be 16. I think it's just going to be 16. The thing is, they already started with enough. That's why I feel like 16 is enough. Even sharing it with the operating system, it's enough, as far as I'm concerned. I don't like the thing is, Sony doesn't want to raise any kind of BOM cost for these newer units, so they're just gonna stick with 16. RAM is too expensive. $2 a gig. Multiply that by the several hundreds of thousands of RAM chips that they have to purchase, though. Yeah, I'm still not 100% on Battlemage, guys. Like, I still don't know when that's coming out. I feel like this should be down here. I really think, because think about it like this. So, like, let's do like an alternate universe. Hey Lou, thanks for subscribing to the channel. So the RDNA 4 equals 4080, roughly, and the Battlemage will equal 4070. So you basically have a Intel 4070 and an AMD 4080. That's essentially what these are. Now that makes it sound really bad to say that. It sounds really bad to say that. A lot of people don't want to hear me say, oh, RDNA 4 is just, it's like a 4080 again. Oh, Battlemage is a 4070 all over again. Because it's like, these are GPUs that Nvidia put out, last year, whatever. And it's like, what's going on here? Well, the thing is, I think that's what these are. At a more basic level, when you break it down, like, what is the closest thing? That's what they are. So, it's like, okay, this year is kind of bland, if you put it that way, because it's like you're not getting anything performance-wise that is a massive improvement over what has already been available for a while. So 4080 for $550. Yeah, that's one way to look at it, if that's what it ends up being priced at. And that's the thing. That goes into another point, guys. We made this, remember earlier? Earlier people were saying, oh, it's 320-bit or 384, 24 gig, 20 gig. This is the other reason why I think this is going to be a 256-bit and a 16 gig. Because if AMD went with a larger chip, they're not going to be pricing it at $550. I can guarantee you that. If they went with a 24 gig, 384, they're not going to be pricing that at $500. That's just going to be like another, that would literally just be a that would be like a $900, $1,000 price card that replaces the XTX. Doesn't move the needle except maybe an RT, right? So if you want it to be priced more appropriately so that more people can buy it, you have to stick to certain hardware constraints to make the bill of materials fit in a certain budget range. So that's why I think it is going to be 16 gigabyte, 256-bit. Why? Because that's what this is. 7800 XT is 256-bit. 16 gigabyte. Today. Now. So it's like, okay, if you want to wait till RDNA 4, you'll potentially get a similar priced product that performs quite a bit better in rasterization. It's like the next tier up, essentially, or maybe like a tier and a half. And it probably has better RT. It would be my guess. So it's like, yeah, if you can wait until the summer, now would be the time to wait. So when people always say, oh, should I wait or should I upgrade? Well, the thing is, now we're kind of in a weird spot where you could potentially get a 4080 like or a XTX like card for cheaper that performs the same. So that would be a pretty good deal. What about the rest of the RDNA 4 lineup? That's all probably going to be like next year. So here's the thing. If it kind of depends, like if they do that in Q3, then, you know, these things like, okay, if they want to do like a lower end one, like if they want to do RDNA 4 128-bit, what would this be? Like 12 gigabyte or something? Or 10 or something. I don't know what this would be in the memory amount. But if they wanted to do that, that would either be like Q4, like this would be like December, November, or like Q1 of next year, would be my guess. I'm thinking we're not going to see anything like this. So I would say no, it would not come out until the following year. Because AMD still has a lot of existing inventory. So they're not going to release a new mid-range product when they still have a bunch of mid-range previous generation that they need to sell through. Oh, and there was a question earlier, will you play Last Epoch? I don't even know what that is. I've never heard of that. Oh, maybe I did hear about it a while ago. Last Epoch. I don't know. It's a early access hack and slash role-playing game developed by 11th Hour Games. I don't know. I wasn't planning on it, I'll tell you that. I don't know anything about it. So I don't really know. I still need to finish Persona 3 Royal and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. And I still need to go and finish the Final Fantasy VII Intergrade before Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So I still have like 3 games I need to finish. So probably not. But yeah, I don't think we're going to get anything else besides this one GPU from AMD. I don't think, like, they're going to have to sell through the RDNA 3. In fact, there's still RDNA 2 available. Like, there's still 6750 XT, 6650 XT. There's still RDNA 2 around. So it's like, yeah, they're not going to introduce any RDNA 4 that's in that, like in the lower end of the market. They're going to just introduce this. It is what it is. They might just, like, when this comes out, I expect the top end RDNA 3 to be phased out. So like XTX, XT, I think they're going to discontinue, like they're no longer going to produce them. So internally, my gut feeling tells me that internally, once RDNA 4 launches, AMD will just quietly EOL the 7900 XT and the 700 XTX. So they'll just manufacture this one thing, and they'll probably still manufacture the dies for the 7800 XT, but probably not, because at that point they're probably going to be waiting for the successor, which would come out in probably Q1 of 2025. That's what I think is going to happen. Yeah. But you've heard it here first. These are my performance predictions in terms of where these line up. So Battlemage, I guess if you're talking like AMD language here, this would be, what is the closest card from AMD? Like some people will say this. This is actually, remember, we're not talking about 4070 Super. We're talking about 4070 regular. And it's actually quite a bit slower than the 7800 XT. So I don't even know what the closest, like 4070 is between this. It's like that is like less than the RDNA 4. Wait a minute. Or no, I'm saying Battlemage. I'm saying Battlemage. Battlemage. Okay, so let me do it this way. Let me do it this way. Instead of saying it like that, I think Battlemage, it'll be like 7700 XT is less than Battlemage is less than 7800 XT. This is what I think will be how it compares with AMD. So there. That is kind of what I think. And then RDNA 4. RDNA 4, so if we do it this way, if we compare RDNA 4 with like AMD's RDNA 3, it will be like 7900 XT is less than RDNA 4, is less than equal, I guess, less than equal to XTX. Something like this. That would be my guess. I don't know. That's why it's easier to just like use the Nvidia card numbers, because it's more of a direct comparison. Whereas with the AMD ones, you're kind of having to approximate between two different tiers. Overclock 7700 XT. Only the 7800 XT seems to overclock well due to the bus width and extra memory bandwidth. What about the rest of... Okay, yeah, we answered that. Yeah, I think that's basically where Battlemage and RDNA 4 will land. So the oversimplified version of it is Battlemage is a 4070. So if you want an Intel branded 4070, that's Battlemage. And you'll be waiting for a while for that, because that's supposedly, according to the chat, Q4. RDNA 4, according to the chat, is Q3, although I'm kind of on board with that the more I think about it, because that's when Zen 5 is supposed to launch. So I can totally see AMD launching them together, because they've done something like that in the past. Although they don't always do that. Keep that in mind. AMD did not launch Zen 4 and RDNA 3 together. They did Zen 4 at the tail end of Q3, which was the end of September of 2022. And then RDNA 3 was launched in December, which is basically the last month of Q4 in the same year. So they don't always do that. So RDNA 4 could be Q4. I don't think it would be smart for them to do that. I think they should do it. They should launch it sooner. But it kind of depends. I feel like it's ultimately, I really think it's going to boil down to the existing inventory of RDNA 3, particularly the 7900 XT and the 7900 XTX. Now, here's the thing, guys. The fact that there's all these rumors around RDNA 4 kind of tells me that AMD is in no position to release a RDNA 3 refresh. So that means don't expect a 7950 XTX or a 7950 XT. Like, they're not going to do that, because all these rumors about RDNA 4 coming out this year kind of indicate that that is the case. So then there's no reason to do a refresh, because you'd only do a refresh like Nvidia did if you're not going to refresh that stack for several quarters. Does that make sense? Like, you're not going to introduce a new product that's a revised version of your old product if you're like planning on selling newer stuff literally like 4-5 months later. It would be dumb to do that. See, so yeah, that's why I don't think we're going to see a 4090 Ti, and we're not going to see a 7950 XTX, because RDNA 4 is coming out, and obviously 5090 is coming out. So, and the 4090 is still in such high demand. It would be stupid of Nvidia. It would be very foolish of Nvidia to release a 4090 Ti, because they already sell enough 4090s as it is. Meanwhile, they can still upsell professionals the 4090 Ti as a professional card with 48 gigabytes of VRAM. So those are my thoughts on upcoming hardware releases. I think that was pretty much it for the stream. Yeah, we talked a lot about graphics cards. No one really talked about the CPUs. I'm surprised. Zen 5 and Arrow Lake are coming out this year. We're getting new CPU platforms. In the case of AMD, if you already have X670, X670E, B650, B650E, then you will be able to just update the BIOS and just go straight to Zen 5, and you don't have to change the board. However, if you're on Intel, doesn't matter what Intel you're on, you could be on 12, 13, 14, or anything older, which would be a completely different socket. If you do want to go to Arrow Lake later this year, you are going to have to buy a new motherboard. It is a full new platform, socket upgrade, everything. So, yeah, Arrow Lake is going to be pretty interesting. I think, I don't know what Intel's going to do on desktop. I know Arrow Lake on mobile has the AI NPUs, kind of like AMD's mobile processors. So I don't know if they're going to put AI on the desktop one. My guess is that Intel Arrow Lake will have the AI processors on the desktop version of Arrow Lake. That is my assumption. Although I don't know if that's true. I got to think about that a little bit more, because desktop doesn't care about battery life. So Copilot can run on P cores, and who cares, you know? But if they want to show efficiency numbers, they're probably going to want to include the NPU on the desktop version. Now, Zen 5, I don't expect any AI processors on the desktop Zen 5. I think it's going to be very similar to Zen 4 in that regard. If you want AI on the AMD stuff, that's going to be mobile, or probably the APUs that are going to come out following that. But yeah, I think Zen 5 is going to be an easy upgrade if you already have a motherboard that supports it. Otherwise, it will have a new chipset, just like when Intel introduced Z790 as a successor to Z690. Zen 5 is launching with X870E to replace X670, and there will be like an entire refresh across the entire lineup. So that'll be interesting, because I have a feeling the wire traces on X870 will be significantly better, potentially resulting in higher memory speeds at more consistent memory kits. So I think that might be one improvement. So basically what I'm saying is, if you have Zen 4, you can do a drop-in upgrade and keep your same board. If you're on an older AMD platform or an older Intel platform and you want to go to Zen 5, you're definitely going to wait. You're going to want to wait until, well, okay, you're going to have to wait for the chip anyway. But if you're going to buy Zen 5 as a new build, not an upgrade, stock upgrade, you want to buy the new chipset. Do not buy the old chipset, because that'll be like somebody buying, you know, a 14900K with an old Intel Z690 motherboard. Like, why would anybody do that? You know what I'm saying? So that same logic applies to Zen 5's launch. Like, if you're gonna get Zen 5 new, buy the newer motherboard that's designed for, is what I'm saying. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. My assumption is Zen 5 will have vastly improved memory performance. I think F clock might be faster because I think the 8700G, I think the F clock on that runs at 2400 right out of the box. So, and I think someone overclocked it to 2500. And using a X670E Gene from Asus, somebody was already able to overclock the RAM to like 10,000. I think it was like 10,456 or something on the DDR5 Hynix M die or A die. I forgot which kit, but somebody hit like well over 10,000 mega transfers on the 8700G with an F clock at 2500 megahertz. So yeah, I expect Zen 5, and that's Zen 4.5. That's not Zen 5. Keep that in mind. So I expect Zen 5 to carry over those F clock improvements, which would translate to better memory and lower latency, or better memory performance, lower latency. So pretty interesting to see how that will play out. Arrow Lake, I don't really have a whole lot of info on Arrow Lake other than to say that it is going to be very similar in layout with the tile designs that Meteor Lake used. Although I think the interposers is going to be a little bit different because they're doing a desktop as opposed to a mobile. But I have no idea on time frame. I know that Intel has to launch Arrow Lake this year, so it will come this year. Probably Q4, probably November if I had to guess. Around, like the Black Friday holiday season. That's probably when we can expect Arrow Lake. And that'll probably line up with Windows 12. So keep that in mind. Where Windows goes, Intel is not far behind. So with that, I'm probably going to go ahead and end the stream. I think Matt was asking, can you join VC? Maybe. We'll see. I think I have some stuff that I need to do after the stream, but we'll see. I might pop in there later. Windows 12, is that office? Oh, is that official? I think so. Same as Windows 11. When Windows 11 launched and Alder Lake followed shortly after. So I expect Intel to do the same thing with Arrow Lake. Alright guys, so that's going to be a wrap for this episode of This Week in Tech. If you're new to the channel, if you just subscribed, thank you for subscribing. If you like this sort of content, you probably want to check some of the videos that I did. We did an upload. I uploaded a video on the RTX 3080 Ti versus the 4080 Super recently. So if you want to see how 3080 Ti compares, check out that video. Because not a lot of content creators compared 3080 Ti with 4080 Super. So, any game streaming this weekend? Possibly. Yeah, maybe. I might do Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, or one of those newer games that I need to finish. Or maybe you might see me finish Final Fantasy VII Intergrade or something like that. We'll see. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you guys next week. Take care. Thanks.